I drew this cathedral in Sofia in Bulgaria yesterday in a 60-minute drawing. You may or may not have seen the video, but when I was working out what I'd draw today, I was going to do some more of the architectural doodles, but I thought, why not do a quick, more doodly style sketch of what I did yesterday? It's such a great building. I so enjoy looking at it, and there's certainly lots of things to worry about in it. But I thought it'd be nice to have a go without quite that same pressure of trying to do a more considered drawing. And so I thought I'd do a really fast drawing of the same scene. And I discovered in the end there was just as much pressure on me. It was just a different sort, trying to draw this in the fastest time possible. So this took me 20 minutes to draw today. And you're watching this now at actual drawing speed, but in about 30-40 seconds, I'm going to switch to double speed. But I just thought I'd do the first minute actual speed so that you can get a sense of how fast I am moving. And can I say I'd have struggled to move this fast if I hadn't drawn this yesterday, because there was a lot of memory still in me as to how the different components aligned with each other. But one thing, by the end, I realized I didn't do as well today in the third of the time available that I gave myself. And that was aligning new elements with what I'd already drawn according to how they aligned with the reference. I just didn't have enough time to do as careful observation as I would normally do. And there are a number of, I think, noticeable repercussions from that. And at the end, I will compare this drawing with the one I did yesterday and also with the reference, and as well as showing you a really great approach to compare the accuracy of proportions and so forth after we've finished a drawing. Fast and devastatingly blunt. And I did that with both drawings to make the comparison between the two drawings. You'll also get to see how the perhaps not lack of observation, but less diligent observation can affect the same drawing with almost the same level of attention being applied to it. Now I'm using the same 0.1 millimeter, and we're switching now, or we've just switched into double speed. And another thing I realized at the end is that some of these perspective angles, particularly the top one joining the tower and the domes, aren't quite as precise. And I've also gone up just a little bit too high here with this. And it may not look much, but when we add a little bit of too high, too low, too narrow, too wide, and often we tend to make the same sort of error with these things. They add up over the course of a building, particularly one with as much detail as this. Now, I still didn't want to have a lot of extra lines at the end, so I'm not blocking things out, but I did do perhaps more guidelines than I did yesterday. Light lines just to let me draw things such as a row of windows in place. But today I was far more impulsive, that's not quite the right word, a little more impetuous in how I did all the windows and arches and things. And I tended to do them just straight off by blocking in the actual windows. So negative spacing, and not quite so fussed about proportions as well. So now I'm coming down to ground level. I'm almost drawing this in the same order as yesterday, not completely, not so much at the start, although later on the order becomes more straightforward, more obvious. I didn't finish the small amount there is to the left of the tower immediately, but I did the same approach as yesterday. I looked at the space that I had for these 3 pairs of arch windows. I did the left side, the right side, and that let me, even moving as quickly as I am, that let me position the center windows with perhaps a better spacing than I would have had if I'd just gone from left to right. Whenever we have symmetry, we need to pause and just consider what's the best way I can get this worked out. Remember, you're watching this now at double speed. So if you'd like to watch all of this at actual speed, see if you can draw along, then use that cog icon in the settings to slow this video down to half speed. Please hit that like button for me, and if you can see the hype button, it is a tremendous benefit for me and my channel at this stage if you can hit that as well. Or instead of, if you only have time to hit one button, I'd really appreciate that. And so some things, I know that I'm taking some advantage from yesterday. And look, if you look at a subject such as this cathedral and you think, I'd love to draw that, but it's just too hard, then why not just draw a part of it? Just draw a little part of it. Don't see it as producing an artwork. In fact, I think that's a very unhelpful thing to be thinking of really anything we draw unless someone's paying us to draw it. But to think of it as practice of just having the enjoyment of pushing ourselves to go a bit harder than perhaps we've been going in the past. So just do the tower. Just do one of the ground floor arcades. Just do maybe the very top of the main dome, and just have fun exploring the perspective implications, which I certainly didn't have much time to worry about today, but the perspective implications of circles and perspective as they are horizontal and move higher above eye level, and how that affects other curved shapes within it. Because it's quite complex, but if we observe carefully our reference with subjects such as this, we start to see the patterns. We see how, as we move from left to right, curves change, and how the view of things such as deeply pierced spaces change, or how the same thing changes when we get higher and higher. And these are great to have time to look at and consider without the overhead of doing the rest of the drawing. And we're actually more free to experiment with just trying things a bit differently to try and capture something perhaps better than what we've been doing, if we're not afraid of messing up a whole drawing. So here I am. Now, one of the big differences, and I think this is a significant difference to yesterday, and it's always good to consider the order in which we draw things, is that I drew that main dome before I'd finished the tower. I drew the tower first yesterday. And besides the fact that I had tape around this, which helped me judge the closeness to the, if you like, edge of the photo more accurately, more easily on my paper. Besides that fact, I drew this tower first. And then when I drew the main dome, I was able to reference it off that tower, or from that tower, firstly with my reference and then on my drawing. Now, I didn't have the tower in place, so I couldn't reference it. And at the end, you'll see what the implications of that was. But it's a great example of why the order in which we draw things is important. So I'm now realizing that, wow, this is taking a bit longer than I thought, even though I'm pretty much going as fast as I can to do the drawing this size. My paper is half A4, which is A5, which is half copy paper if you're in the US. So that gives you a sense of the size I'm doing, and I am using, as I think I said, the same 0.1 millimeter pen. Our pen choice is really important. And the things we need to bear in mind is not just how much detail am I drawing, but how large is my drawing going to be. Now, I had a few problems down here with the ground, and in my haste, I drew some lines a little too quickly, and I spent a little time just making a few corrections, just trying to push that bottom line up slightly as it goes from left to right, and then bring some lines above it down slightly as they go from left to right. And get these in place. Now I felt that my proportions weren't quite as I wanted them to, but it is interesting at the end when we compare the two and see why the overall effect is as it is. Please hit that like button if you didn't think to do it before when I asked you. I'd love to hear in the comments, do you try and draw buildings that are as complex as this? And if you do, what's your experience? And do you have any tips for others? Things perhaps that I may not use myself, but may really suit someone else's drawing style and approach and how they learn. So if you've got any ideas of such complexity, that main dome looks a bit like it's sliding off to the right. But I actually think the problem is the left-hand side. It doesn't curve down enough as it curves around towards the left. And so it gives the impression that it's standing higher than on the other side. And these are the things that I just didn't have the same time. Well, I mean, I had as much time as I wanted to take, but I had really decided 20 minutes was the maximum I wanted to draw. And so I just didn't feel like I had the time to look at my reference as often as I normally would, and certainly as I did yesterday. But I do have to say that one part I clearly like better than yesterday's drawing is the very first part I drew, which I thought in yesterday's drawing was the weakest part of the whole thing. And in a moment, you'll get to see them both, and you can let me know in the comments, do you agree with me? So now I've got two drawings of our Bulgarian cathedral. The question is, how do they compare with each other and with the reference? I was trying to draw both of them actual size. Sometimes it's helpful to check our accuracy because it lets us know how we're going. So the width is there, and if I look at this doorway here perhaps, and this doorway here, it just lets me judge how accurate I'm estimating these and how well this method of drawing is working for me. So on yesterday's 60-minute drawing, it lines up like this, and well, that's pretty good. But yesterday I did have the tape around, which gave me an additional reference point as I grew the building. I didn't have that today, so how has that changed things? That didn't change things much at all in terms of the width. What about the height? Sometimes we can have more trouble estimating one direction than the other. How do they go here? So here we have the base of the building and the door, and I'll put a mark just for this as a staging point. So yesterday's 60-minute drawing, my tower's just slightly less, but at this point it was pretty much spot on, and in this section I drew it just a little bit shorter than in the reference. For today's drawing, my tower is clearly taller, although there's less of a problem here than there is here. And if I'm just looking at it now, yeah, that's probably a better point to have actually done. So from here down, there's actually not really much problem at all. But for this section, from there above, I've become a little too enthusiastic as I've shot up. What about further along? And we'll take the base of this drum section as well as a midway point. So yesterday's, and that's pretty spot on. Today's, again, I'm spot on here, almost. It's probably actually just a bit above that. But I've shot up too high on my dome, on both domes in fact. I think I was aware that yesterday I was too flat on this dome, as you can see here, and so I just pushed it a bit higher, but I went too far. However, the faster the drawing, the more we're just trying to grab the effect rather than actual detail. So I'm happy with the difference between the two and with the reference. Which do you think works better as a drawing? 60 minutes or 20 minutes? G'day, I'm Stephen Travers. Hope you found this interesting. It wasn't what I was going to do, but I just thought, I'd like to have another go using all that memory from yesterday at what I think is quite an extraordinary piece of architecture. Why don't you have a go as well? Either a longer drawing or a faster one, or just draw a section of it if you find the whole building a little intimidating. But in the end, whatever you draw, however you draw it, make sure you have fun. I'll see you next time.